Yesterday I had to rush home from work because while I was lecturing, a huge fire broke out, a prairie fire, a grass fire, and we had high winds and it was headed toward my neighborhood. And so I had to rush home, and I had to take a route that I don't normally take because the highway that I would normally take um, to get home was all in flame. The fire had crossed the highway, and it had spread, crossed the river, and was moving towards the city of Lethbridge and the outskirts of the city of Lethbridge west, where I live. And so, I took a different route, and I didn't know if I was going to be able to get home, but I was able to get home. And once I realized that the fire probably wasn't going to hit my neighborhood in particular, I relaxed a bit, and I went out and I took this photo. You can see the smoke in the air, and you can see the high winds pushing the water and pushing the leaves and such. This is the area. This is the spot where I normally feed feed birds and train in the mornings. And anyway, a bunch of stuff has come up from this fire, and part of it, like this is the second really big fire that's threatened my neighborhood this year. And each time this kind of thing happens, it's a normal occurrence here on the prairie that there's big prairie fires. Once a fire gets started, and if there's a high wind, then it just spreads pretty much uncontrollably. And so that provokes some thoughts in me. And then in the context of this fire, um, some racial tension emerged because the fire started on the Blood Indian Reserve. And the Blood Indian Reserve, I mean, this is where my wife grew up, where she's from, and this is where I work and all of this. And my life is really, grounded here. And the Blood Indian Reserve is upriver and upwind from the city of Lethbridge. And the city of Lethbridge is basically, a white colonial Canadian city. And so there's been an ongoing racial tension here for, a century. And right now, the way it is it's kind of like a quiet apartheid situation here, where Native people pretty much stick to Native people, white people pretty much stick to white people, and it's pretty tough for Native people to get jobs in the city of Lethbridge, even still. Um, it's changed a little bit over the last maybe 5 or 6 years, but it's still pretty much an apartheid situation. And so, because the fire started on the Blood Reserve, and it started from a fallen power line, right? It wasn't like anybody did it, you know, out of negligence or anything like that. It was just that the wind knocked down a power line. Fire started, crossed the reserve, skipped the river, and came toward Lethbridge. And then you had some guy here in Lethbridge that started to make public racial remarks about people of the Blood Reserve. And there's a lot of people from Blood Tribe that live here in Lethbridge, including my family. And it's made for a really ugly racist tension to rise here. So a lot of people are talking about this circumstance. Anyway, so both yesterday and today, I had some thoughts that I wrote down about this, and I shared them on my Facebook page, but I wanted to record them in voice here on video, and upload them to my YouTube as well. So the first one I wrote last night, and I wrote it just when the fire had been put out, and I'll just read it. 4,800 hectares, or 480 square kilometers, or 185 square miles. That's the size of the fire. Smells like a big campfire was doused in water outside my house, but it's out. That's the good thing. Unfortunately, some people lost their homes. I can't really relate to what that must be like, though every time something like this happens, I find myself mentally preparing. I wasn't sure what situation I'd be coming home to today, but I wasn't really too worried. Given the prevailing winds, any fire would have to travel through at least a mile of concrete gridwork and green manicured lawns to get to my place. At the same time, with the popularity of vinyl siding, it's always a possibility. And so it ran through my mind, for sure, the potential that it could all burn, or at the very least, that exposure to the toxic smoke could kill. I guess for me, the main concern was my family and our animals. All the material stuff, I wouldn't want to lose it, but I'm not so attached to it that the loss would be devastating. On the contrary, it might even be liberating. Psychologically, I think I'm pretty solid for dealing with such loss. Not that I want to test it. But the whole episode did bring a few thoughts to mind. First off, we know this is always fire season, at the end of summer, when the grass is dry. Not a year goes by without a fire at this time. So why don't we smartly employ fire in our favor? On days when there's less wind, at times in the winter, we should have controlled burns in the areas where the dry grass of several years' accumulation is the thickest and most dangerous. In this manner, we could already create breaks against the dangerous spread of fires like we had today. Moreover, it would benefit our local ecology. Working with the rattlesnakes, I've learned that there are a lot of places on the Cooley Rim that could really benefit from a good fire. In the area where most of our Lethbridge rattlesnakes reside, the dead grass is several years in and above the coulee has matted so thick that several rodent and plant species have all but disappeared, and with them the predators. For instance, there were no hawk or owl nests at either of my study sites this year, for the first time. Why? Because the food, especially the ground squirrel population, has dropped dramatically. Why? Because the ground squirrels prefer short grass, not this matted mess of several years' accumulation. This condition also lends to a higher likelihood that any fire in the area will be well fed and all the more powerful. So that's one thing. We're not taking ecologically sound preventative measures. Secondarily, we have a huge population of humans who are without any learned skills for dealing with the inevitability of these fires that will certainly have always continued to occur during this latter part of the summer season. Why isn't firefighting considered a basic skill for living here? Why isn't it taught in primary school? For that matter, why aren't most primary skills for contemporary living in the local reality taught to the public? In my mind, we should all have the skills for firefighting, and the professionals, the specialists, should be focused on controlled burning. And why aren't our young people taught how to build and maintain homes, electrical, plumbing, what have you? Why aren't people taught how to acquire food and water, basic skills for life? Why don't our high school graduates have a working knowledge of the local ecology? Why don't our doctoral candidates in biology have a working knowledge of the local ecology? And what about our medical skills? Yeah, there's a bit of unapplied instruction in CPR, the Heimlich maneuver, and simple first aid offered in high school health classes. But why not more extensive applied training in these skills, as well as things like tracheotomy, suturing, intravenous injections and infusions? All the stuff that a field medic is trained in. Shouldn't we know how to perform these basic medical procedures? I think we should. Anyway, that's my rant for this evening. Good night and pleasant dreams. So that's what I wrote last night. And, obviously what it brought to mind to me was that I felt kind of helpless because this big fire was going. It was beyond the control of the local professionals to some extent. I mean, they did put it out, so I got to give them the hand. They got it, they put it out, and took care of it. But it burned, and it became a pretty dangerous situation before they were able to put it out. For a long time, it was uncontrollable. You should have seen the film footage of it. I would have put it up on here if I owned the rights to it or something like that. But we basically had, like, because of the winds, as the fire moved along, it was like a tornado of fire. And they couldn't build brakes quick enough to stop it, and it really did look like it was going to hit the city. In fact, parts of the neighborhoods just north of us, they were all evacuated because it came pretty close. And for me, I felt like, there's probably 50,000 able-bodied men who live in the city of Lethbridge, and we're all rendered kind of impotent because we just got to sit at home and wait for the professionals to put this out. And why aren't we all trained in this? Because prairie fires are a basic part of our reality here. They happen every year. Why isn't everybody trained on how to cooperatively and collectively stop these fires from, burning down our homes? A bunch of homes got burned yesterday. People are now homeless because of this, and all their stuff, all their memories, and all that stuff that were wrapped up in their material possessions, all that stuff burned down. So, that was one thing, and it led me to think a lot about education in general. We have all of our kids are in high school learning X plus Y, algebra and geometry, and to me it's like X plus Y equals zombies, because we come out of school and we're still, we're unable to deal with the basic reality of our life. We don't have the knowledge to maintain our homes. We have to hire special people to come in and fix things for us. We have to take our vehicles to the mechanic shop to have the mechanics fix things for us. We don't have the basic skills to get, to live our lives. We can't even get food and water for the most part. I mean, I'm pretty good with food and with getting my own food and water from the natural abundance of the world. But if there wasn't commercial food available, the vast majority here would not survive. And why don't we teach our kids these basic skills? Why are we loading their heads with a bunch of supposed knowledge that is not really applicable in real life? Most of what I learned in high school, at least, I've never used again. Most of what I've learned in college, I've never had a use for. So to me, it's kind of ridiculous, and it got me thinking about education, and it got me thinking about, at least for myself, in my training, to embody more of my own completeness as a human being. I think I really need to look at some of those things. Some of those basic things, like, that I need to be able to do, that I need to be able, like medical stuff. If we have a serious injury, we have to wait for a special medical technician to arrive on the scene before it can be adequately dealt with, in a lot of cases. we should all know how to do emergency medicine, stuff like this. So that was one stream of thought that came out of this experience. And then the racism flared up. And I've listened to the racism all day, the debate and stuff about the racism that's been going on here locally. And finally, I decided to say something. This evening, I decided to say something on my Facebook. And so I wrote, "Oh heck, I've been biting my tongue / typing thumbs all day. I might as well express myself. For those on my Facebook who aren't from here, a bit of context. Yesterday's wind and fire, which started from a down power line, was unaware of the bizarre social categories we cling to here. And so they just swept across our imaginary divide between Indian and white, throwing the two together, disrupting the quiet of our normal apartheid. For the majority of us, this blatant lack of conventional discrimination on the part of the wind and fire was acceptable. Most of us are pretty sick of this apartheid anyway, and have been trying to just live as if it wasn't there, because we know that the only way to get rid of it is to quit feeding it. But then there was this one asshole who goes ahead and prods with his ignorance at the wound we've all been wanting to heal. And of course, it's like a cockroach sighting. If there's one, there's probably 1,000. And from this one asshole, a whole new flame starts up. A fart torch of sorts, but this flame more insidious than real fire, just a brew of mutual hatred directed at categories and lines we all should know are fictions of our imaginations. In this context, it's difficult to express oneself without inciting more ignorant hate. Cognitive diseases of this sort are contagious, they're social. Any expression of ignorant hate is bound to meet a hateful resistance. I know this well, surrounded as I am by neighbors who don't understand me, and at least in some cases hate me. My response to them is not one of pity, but of despisement. They are ruining my pursuit of beauty in life, and so too the racists on both sides of the divide we're keeping here. They're ruining our experience of the beauty. If only they recognized and understood the significance of the fact that the wind and the fire and the corvids and the skunks and the snakes and everything else in nature doesn't subscribe to our stupid fictions, and how to respond to their oblivion in the meantime, or should we respond at all?" So that was what I wrote this evening, and it's really tough living in this kind of apartheid situation. Um, and it's really tough trying to figure out what to do in a context where, the vast majority of people around you seem to be like zombies, seem to be addicted to this social, cultural script of what life is about, and you know that it's not about that. I spend so much of my time in nature with animals and plants that pretty much for my whole life I've had to negotiate this thing, like how do you deal with with these weird narratives that humans are living by that don't have anything to do with reality. And to me, many people are really, they're it shouldn't be that way. I know it's probably a problem with me myself, but they're kind of like spoiling the beauty. They're spoiling the potential beauty that we could all be living. And they make it so that, like the people that see the beauty and that see beyond those fictions, that they're left, kind of lonely in a way, because they don't get to share that experience with the vast majority of the other people that are living around them. So it's frustrating, but yeah, that's what's happened in my neck of the woods over the last 24 hours or so.